Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter, and I've been sewing. It's been a really fun couple of days. I've made a bunch of these little pouches out of some art-inspired fabric that I bought at Martin's back in December. I had no plans to make this project until I saw the fabric. It was a pack of 20 10 by 10 pieces of fabric for I think maybe, I don't know, I think it was just a couple dollars. And I saw that and I thought those would make the cutest little art supply pouches. And they absolutely do. So these little pouches measure about 4 inches by 9 inches. They're great for like pens or pencils. And they also had a bunch of little zippers there at Martin's for 2 for $1, and I grabbed a bunch of zippers that I thought would go cute with the fabrics. And yesterday I decided that was the day I was going to make some pouches. And then I thought, should I make a tutorial on this? Because it's a simple little zipper pouch. Probably everybody that ever wanted to sew a simple zipper pouch already knows how to do it. But then I thought, it's not so much how to sew a zipper pouch, because we probably all can figure that out if we took basic home economics in high school, but it's why to sew the zipper pouch. And you're probably thinking, Lindsay, is this Zen in the art of motorcycle repair? What's going on here? The reason why I wanted to do this video is because if you can sew a zipper pouch, then you can sew a cushion. You can sew a cushion cover for your living room cushion, so you don't have to go out and buy brand new throw pillows when you get tired of them. You can just sew a new cover that can be washed. If you can sew a zipper pouch, you can make a curtain. If you can sew a zipper pouch, you can replace a zipper in a pair of jeans where the zipper broke. If you keep your sewing machine out so you can make little zipper pouches whenever you want to, then you can sew that little strap to go in your sketchbook. You can mend a pair of jeans. You can mend a bag or purse. You can mend all kinds of things so you don't have to throw it away and buy new. If fabric is expensive where you are, I know Joann's just closed. I was never a big Joann's fabric shopper. I buy my fabric at Martin's. Sometimes even Walmart. If you have some clothes that you're going to be throwing away or donating, but you don't know if they'll actually get purchased, you can cut up enough fabric to make some zipper pouches. So it's just this kind of circular, creative lifestyle that I want to promote. And also, I don't know if I want to say want to make sewing cool again, but I want people to realize that it doesn't have to be a really big deal. And true, you can buy clothing for way cheaper than you can make it nowadays. You can make things for a lot cheaper than you can buy them in a lot of cases. Like I said, the throw pillows. You can make covers for the throw pillows you already have for very little money, especially if you have a source like Martin's or you have a fabric district or something like that. You can even find inexpensive fabric online, or you can make it exactly what you want and pay a little more for the fabric but have a much better product. If you need a costume, you can buy some, you know, cheaply made costume at a department store or at like Spirit Halloween, nothing wrong with that. Or you could spend that kind of money for the fabric and make something that's a way higher quality. Also, things like curtains can be kind of expensive. You can make them very inexpensively. Maybe you found some really beautiful flat bed sheets at a department store. You could sew those into curtains. There are so many different ways that you can make things for around your home much cheaper. I don't know why curtains are so expensive. I don't know why throw pillows are so expensive. I don't know why tablecloths are so expensive when you can literally make them for so much less. If you need maternity clothes, at least when I was pregnant with my kids, and this was, you know, this was over 20 years ago, but I made my own maternity clothes because what was available was expensive and hideous. And I was able to make cute stuff for a fraction of the money, and it was fun. It was a fun hobby to do as well. So without further ado, I'm going to show you how to make these little zipper pouches and hopefully inspire you to get out your sewing machine and find a place to leave it up, so that rather than throwing away that t-shirt or pair of pants with a rip, you can patch it with a cute patch, or you can stitch it up, or you can alter those pants that are too big to fit you perfectly, or you can let out that dress that's gotten a little too tight over the years. You can do those things and give your pocketbook a break and have the enjoyment of knowing you did it yourself. And that's the other thing. It's like, I was sewing last night and I was like, oh, I wonder what time it is, figuring it was probably around 7 because I came down here after I ate dinner to do some sewing. It was 9:30 and I was in such a good mood. And it's kind of an old-fashioned domestic thing, but I think the reason sewing is such an enjoyable hobby for so many people is because it's something that probably our mothers and grandmothers did, but it's also something that stays done. These zipper pouches will stay done. They're going to stay done. I just washed dishes this morning. It took me, I probably could have sewn 2 zipper pouches in the time it took me to wash those dishes. Tomorrow, those dishes will not be done. I'll have another sink full to wash. These will be done. So there's another reason why to sew. And I just wanted to put this at the front in case you don't care about the tutorial, because I think this is what the kind of more important part of the video is. But if you want to see how to make a simple zipper pouch, head on over to the sewing machine with me and I'll explain it the best I can. Let's take a look at what we're going to need for supplies. I've got a piece of 10" by 10" fabric. It's just cotton, like quilter's cotton. I've got a zipper. The zipper is, this zipper is a 6" zipper, but you could go anywhere from 6 to, I'd say, 9 inches with your zipper. Depends on how big of an opening you want. I have a rotary cutter. A pair of fabric scissors is fine if you don't have a rotary cutter. I have a bone folder, but a pencil or a pen with a cap on it will work just fine. I have a seam ripper, and I have a pair of fabric shears. I also have a sewing machine here that is loaded with white thread in both the top and the bottom, but you could use whatever thread you want to match or contrast with your fabric depending on the look you're going for. What we're going to do is we're going to start by cutting the fabric here. Oh, you also need an iron and an ironing board, because that will make it look a lot better if you can press your stuff as you're going. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut this piece of fabric in half. This is a 10 by 10 piece of fabric, so I'm going to cut it at 5 inches. Now you could do that with this. You could fold it in half and use your scissors. I am just going to use this quilting square, quilting ruler to cut it with a rotary cutter, but like I said, you can use scissors. And I'm just going to set that at the 5" mark. And you can do a couple layers with this, so if you have a bunch of fabric pieces, you can cut probably 4 at a time. And be careful with these are super sharp. And I'm just going to cut straight down. Okay. Like I said, scissors, you don't have to have this. Don't buy that for just that project. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is put these right sides together. One of the benefits, if you did use pinking shears, and that will give you that zigzag edge, is that your fabric won't fray. So just kind of keep that in mind. If you have zigzag scissors, pinking shears, you can go ahead and use them. So now we're going to go over to the sewing machine and we are going to stitch a line right there. I'm zoomed into my sewing machine here. I'm not sure if it shows up on camera, but there's these little markings to the right of your needle, and it shows you, it's a seam allowance guide. It shows you how wide your seams are. So if I put this here, it's going to be about 3/4 of an inch of a seam allowance, and I like to have a nice big seam allowance when I am, or it's about 5/8 I would say. Yeah, around 5/8. I like to have plenty of a seam allowance if I can afford it. When I'm doing a zipper, because it just gives you a little bit more room to put the zipper in. I'll lower the presser foot and I'm going to put my needle in the into the fabric by turning this wheel towards me. Okay, and then what I have my stitch length here is at 2, so they're kind of small. That's what I'm going to start with, and I'm going to stitch a few stitches, making sure I keep the edge of my fabric on that line as close to it, as close as I can. Don't worry if it's not perfect. I'm going to reverse it. You probably have a little knob or something like that on your machine for reversing. That's going to lock that stitch, and then I'm going to go a couple, maybe an inch or 2 at this stitch length. Okay, now I always stop the machine with the needle in. I'm going to switch this up to 4. Now you never want to change your width with the needle in, FYI. And I'm going to stitch down till I have about an inch left. Now I'm going to switch back to 2. And I'm going to back stitch. And that's going to lock the stitches on the end. Now the reason why I have the stitches going longer in the center of this area is because I'm going to put a zipper there and I'm going to have to rip some of those stitches out, and it's easier to rip out those longer stitches. They're called basting stitches, which basically means kind of like a temporary stitch. Hope that makes sense. So the next thing we need to do is press this open. So I'm just going to pull this out, trim my threads, and I'm going to iron it so that I have the seam open like that. So I just put my fabric onto my ironing pad. If you don't have an ironing pad, you could take a towel and lay it down on your table. I'm limited on space, so using this little portable ironing board works really well for me. Alright, and I just ironed it with a dry iron, but if you can use whatever you deem appropriate for the fabric that you're using. So when you're putting your zipper onto your pouch, so this is, we are on the wrong side of the fabric, okay? So we want to make sure this zipper is going to open onto the right side, open from the right side. So we got to put our zipper upside down. Okay, so the zipper upside down, the wrong side of the fabric. The opening of the zipper should line up with the seam that you have. Now, this is a small project, so I don't pin anything here, but if you want to, you could pin it. You could just put a little pin to hold it in place. If you want to pin it, you can just pin it in place. I don't find that's necessary, but just don't sew over your pins. Move the pins as you need to, as you come up to them with the sewing machine. But for a small project like this, I personally don't pin it, but if that helps you, then go ahead and do that. You can get a little creative here. Up here is a variety of different types of stitches that this machine will do. Yours may have more stitches. This is a very basic model, but you can play with some different designs. Now, I usually have my machine set on the straight and zigzag variety. That's your basic stitch everything to it. Doesn't do anything fancy, but you can do little smocking stitches. You could do all sorts of interesting little stitches. If you have like a solid fabric and a contrasting thread, it would look really pretty to do one of these kind of ornate stitches. But since this is a patterned fabric, it's very light and I'm using white thread, it wouldn't really show up too much. But I do like to do a zigzag stitch because I've got raw edges here and I want to kind of lock any of those edges down. I don't have a serger, so I am going to widen my stitch the whole way. So, and you probably saw my needle move a little bit. That's going to give me a zigzag stitch. And I'm going to keep the stitches fairly close together so it'll be nice and strong. I'm going to lower my presser foot and put my needle in. Okay. And then I'm going to sew a couple stitches. And I'm going to go back. And then I'm going to go forward. And I'm going to try to get kind of close to the edge of the zipper because I want to try to lock down that raw fabric on the edge. Now you could have your stitches even closer together and do like a satin stitch the whole way. That's completely up to you. I like this crafty look of the zigzags that are about 1/8 of an inch apart. Now when you get towards the end of the zipper, we want to lock down this stitch so that when we tear out the basting stitches in the center, they'll stop here at the end of the zipper. It'll make sense in a minute. So my needle's in the machine, it's in through the fabric into the bottom of the machine. I'm going to lift up the presser foot, pivot this around, put down the presser foot again, and I'm just going to make sure I'm down below. There's like a little like staple at the bottom of where the zipper threads are that stops the zipper from pulling too far and coming off of the zipper. I'm going to make sure I'm below that because I don't want my needle to hit that and break. And now I'm going to stitch across this a couple times. Once I get to the end, I'm going to reverse over it. And then I'm going to do it again. And that's kind of like a bar tack type technique. My needle's in the machine, it's in through the thread. I'm going to lift up the presser foot. Now the reason I want the needle in the machine when I do this is because otherwise when I lift up the presser foot, my fabric's going to come out and lose its place and I'll have a really big stitch in there and I don't want that. So I'm going to pivot it again, drop it down, and then I'm going to come up this side trying to catch, I'm not going to catch the raw fabric because it's a little bit wider, but I can trim that down later. I can even trim it with pinking shears if I want to make sure it doesn't fray. So let's see. Now looking at that, I can see I'm going to be stitching way too close to that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it back this way. I'm going to manually go over, take a look at what that looks like, and that's going to be about right. Okay. take your time. You don't have to rush these seams. Go as slow as you need to. The more you press on the foot pedal, so if you look under I have lots of thread on the floor. Don't mind my housekeeping. I always vacuum after I sew. The more you press, I can show you what this part is. This is this little pedal. The more you press it, the harder you press it, the faster the machine goes. It's like an accelerator on your car. So you're just going to go slow. And I know this is super basic, but there's people watching this that have never sewn before, and they may have inherited their mom or grandmother's sewing machine. So that's why I'm explaining this. And I figure if you've been sewing for a long time, you're probably not watching this. You're probably only watching this if you're a beginner. Okay, so we're going to keep on keeping on here. Now, if you feel like things are getting bunched up, that's another thing. You lift up the presser foot with the needle in the cloth still, and you can kind of spread things out, fuss with it a bit if you need to, and then rearrange. I think with the head of that zipper there kind of in the way, it's gonna creep out a little bit. We'll be fine. And then I'm gonna sew backwards and lock that down. Okay. When you start and stop, okay, I need to look at you. When you stop and start a seam, you got to lock your stitches. That means you go back and forth. Okay, you always want to do that so your garments don't unravel on you. Trust me. Get in that habit of back stitching at the top and end, the bottom and the start, bottom and top of each seam. Does that make sense? I hope so. Some people will say it's a waste of thread, but it's never failed me. Okay, so, and also a little turn towards you when you're removing the cloth. It keeps the thread from getting like kind of stuck down at the bottom of the machine. I'm sure I'm not explaining this the perfectest way, but this is a hobby for me, not my calling. Okay, now because we used a very light colored thread that was pretty close to the color of the background, we just see a cute little stitch there. It's not very noticeable. So if you're new, it might be worth matching your thread as closely as possible to your project so that you can't see if you make a mistake. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I am going to take out the stitches from the fabric, from the center seam between the top and the bottom of the zipper. So here we can see it on the back. We need to tear out the stitches from here to there on that middle seam on the front. Okay, you with me? All right, rewind if you need to. So what did I do with my seam ripper? I always have an extra one in here because I misplace my seam ripper all the time. I'm serious. Buy about, if you're going to start sewing, buy about 10 of these and put them one in every drawer because you will lose them. All right, so I want to figure out where the head of this zipper is. Okay, I can see it on the back, so I'm just going to pinch it. And so I see where it is on the front. And that's when I'm going to start ripping my seams out. So this, or maybe even a little bit below. So I can pull and I can see where the seam comes apart. And that's why we do those long stitches in the middle. That's why I moved it to 4, because that's going to give me wider stitches. It'll be easier to rip out. If I had them way over here on one, they'd be teeny tiny little stitches and they'd be a total pain to have to pull out. But they're stronger. The closer together the stitch, the stronger it is. Just like when we back stitch, we're putting a bunch of stitches close together so it's locking it in. So then what you want to do actually, see this little ball on the end of your seam ripper? If you put that in, that's going to run against your zipper and it's going to keep you from making a hole in your fabric. And now I'm just going to work my way down. Although I will tell you, sometimes I find it works better to put it in the other way, but I think that's probably the appropriate way to do. See, oh, hello, zipper. How are you today? And we're going to go right up to the end where we made that bar tack. That's going to keep us from going too far. Ripping out stitches is not fun. That's why we go to that bigger stitch when we know we're going to have to rip something out, or baste. It's called basting. I remember something from my home economics class in high school. I wonder if they still teach that. Okay, so we've got our zipper free for the most part, so I'm going to zip it back here and open up our little pouch. We got a little opening. So then what I'm going to do, before I pull any more of those stitches out, I'm going to flip it over backwards. I'm going to look for the little staple. So we get a staple, see the end of because the way zippers are made, so in a zipper factory, okay, I've never worked in a zipper factory, but I'm pretty sure this is how they do it. They will have spools and spools of zipper. and then they just cut them to length, and they put the little zipper head on it, and then they put little staples on where they don't want the zipper head to go beyond. So you look for those little staples. Okay, we've got this little staple right here, and we are going to do another bar tack like we did there. We're going to do that tack right above that, so our zipper, so our stitches won't pull through. So when we stitch back over those basting stitches, because you might be thinking, Lindsay, you didn't back stitch there, you only back stitched at the beginning of that stitch, aren't those going to rip out? We're going to do that bar tack across, and that's going to lock those stitches there, so that seam does not rip beyond where our zipper is. I hope this isn't confusing, but we're going to stitch across there. So let's go back to our machine here. Sorry if it's making creaky noises. I probably have that locked a little too tight to be moving it, but now we are going to, so there's my little stapley thing right there. I'm going to put my presser foot down so the edge of the presser foot is right on that staple. I do not want to stitch on the staple. I want to stitch right next to it as close as I can. All right, I'm going to put I'm still in the zigzag stitch. I'm going to put the needle into the fabric. I have put it into manually so the thread doesn't pull through. And now I'm going to stitch it back and forth a couple times. All right, do the last stitch by hand. That makes it easier to pull out. And there we have that top area locked. Locked and loaded. So it doesn't pull through. Okay, so there you can see, hopefully you can see that little metal clip right there, the little staples, and then we're stitching it across right above it. And then actually, it looks like my stitches pulled through right to that part where we stitched over it, so that works out. And you'll have to pick out a few random threads and trim them off, and that's not the end of the world. And it's really important you open up that zipper, because if you don't open up the zipper and you proceed to the next step, you're going to end up sewing your pouch shut, and it'll be a pain in the butt to get those stitches out. So you've got to pull your stitches and open up your zipper. All right, so this is what we have so far. It looks kind of like a Kleenex, like you could make a Kleenex cover. See, everything starts with a basic pouch. Now I'm looking at this and I'm saying, I've got this extra material here. I was able to lock down that side, that raw material pretty well, but I've got extra here. So two things you can do. I don't know if I have any sharp picking shears. I'm going to look. Yeah, let's see if these are sharp. You can get these sharpened. I'm going to see if I can trim this a little bit with my picking shears so it won't fray in the future on this side, because the other side I was close enough. If not, I'll just trim it. No, I don't think so. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to take my regular scissors and just trim off the extra fabric a little bit. So hopefully it doesn't fray. Just don't trim through the front of it. And it's optional. I mean, you'll just get some frayed threads in there. If not the end of the world. All right, so that's what we have. No one's going to see that part. That's on the inside. Okay, so then what we're going to do is fold our pouch in half again. And we are going to stitch it closed. And if you want to pin, go ahead and pin it. But this is such a small project that I don't feel the need to pin for pinning, but you can do whatever you want to do. Just line it up. Okay. And then I like to start at the top seam here, right there, where make sure you're folded right on the seam. And we're going to stitch around our pouch as close to the edge as we can. And by as close to the edge as we can, what I like to do is I'll just, well, you know what, I usually go to the first little marking, so it's probably like 3/8 of an inch. But you could get even closer if you wanted to, but I feel like that's a pretty good amount. I'm gonna put my, so I put, oh, and I want to switch, before you put this in, if you need to change your stitch width, which is like to make it a zigzag or a straight stitch, change your width with it out of the machine. Anytime you're changing the width of your stitch from straight to zigzag, your needle needs to be out of the machine or you'll break it. So I'm going to switch that back over to straight. I'm going to kind of hold the threads with my finger and put the needle in the thread manually. And the reason to do that with the flywheel here is because it keeps these threads from pulling out, and then you don't have to rethread your machine. And that's so frustrating when you have to rethread your machine because it kind of pulled out when you were putting that first stitch in. All right, now we're going to start by, what do we do when we start a seam? Right, we back lock it. So we're gonna stitch a few forward, stitch a few back, and then we're gonna sew as normal. I'm so proud of you, you remembered. All right, we get to the end of the row here. My needle's in, so I'm just gonna pivot it. Maybe I'll do one more stitch before I pivot it. There we go. I don't want my seams too big so then I lose bag space. Line up, make sure everything's lining up good, especially that seam there. I'm sure a proper sewing instructor would say pin it, but you don't got a proper instructor, you got me. Let's see how that looks. I think I'm going to need it a little bit, yeah, I'll need a little bit closer than that. I tend to do these last couple stitches by hand just to get it to stop exactly where I want it. But with the more practice you get, the less you need to do that because you'll just know when your machine's going to stop. And good, we're still lining up really well. Now as you're coming up here, these might want to flip out on you. That's fine, you can stop the machine, you can lift up the presser foot, and you can sneak things in when you need to. So just make sure you don't have any wrinkles in your fabric as you're going. You don't want to sew a wrinkle because then you have to pull out those stitches and that's a pain in the butt. Okay, we're getting close to where we have our folded over pieces. We just want to make sure they are folded. Go nice and slow. And see if you're, probably can't see that. I'm going to see if I can zoom in a little bit. It's not really doing it too much, but you can see that this little bit of fabric, it wants to lift it up. So put my needle in, lift up the presser foot, and I'm just going to tuck that nice and flat under there. Because sometimes the little skis on the presser feet or the feed dogs underneath will want to bunch up that extra layer of fabric, and we don't want it to do that. So, and now we're going to go back and forward. And why do we do that? Why do we do that? Ooh, we were close. Why? Look into my eyes. Look into my eyes. Don't forget to lock down the start and the end of your seams. That image will haunt you. That's chilling. It's chilling. Okay. You can kind of see that too. All right. So we need to take our needle out of the machine before we take our thread out. And we're going to trim this. Okay. So now we have an inside out pouch. Now before we turn it right side out, we're going to do a nifty little trick that I call clipping the corners. I did not invent that, that's just what it's called. Okay, so I'm going to clip off, just make sure you don't clip through the stitches. We're going to clip off this extra bulk on each corner. Just like I said, be sure you don't clip through any of your stitches or it's going to unravel and you'll have a hole there. And that's not what you want. So clipping off each corner. Careful on the top corners because you have stitches that go all the way through to the end, okay? And now, because you unzipped your pouch before you started this ordeal, we're just going to turn it inside out. And yes, I have sewn them with them shut. I have sewn them shut before, and that's a pain. But you know, you'll just spend a good half an hour getting to know your pouch, and it'll be fine. But it's much better if you don't sew them shut. Oh, how not to make your zipper pouch with Lindsay the Frugal Crafter. But yeah, I was so psyched when I found this fabric, and then I was really psyched yesterday when I started making these pouches because then it's like, oh, I did a thing. Alright, I've already lost my bone folder. I don't know what I did with the bone folder, so I grabbed this palette knife. Honestly, a pen with a cap on it, a pencil that's blunt, anything really. You're just gonna get in there and press the little, press your corners. So you're getting in there, you just kind of stick in the tool into the corner that you clipped and you're pressing the fabric out nice and tight. So you get a nice little square corner. Honestly, bone folder works so good for that. I do not know. I must have said it somewhere when I put the ironing board up there. I'll probably look back, edit this and be like, ah, that's where I said it. But look. There's lots of, you could search for sewing tutorials on YouTube. My videos will not come up for a good reason. But hey, this is more of a why you do this. And look how cute this is. Oh my gosh. So you get a cute little zipper pouch. Isn't that adorable? You could put a little tassel on on the zipper pull if you want to. Trim out any little threads that you have hanging on. You're going to find them. There'll be little threads from where you had to rip out that center seam, or just, you know, from starts and stops with your machine. But this is such a cute little pouch. And of course you can go longer with a zipper. You could go probably 9 inches with that if you want a larger one, but you'll be able to fit in most things. I just grabbed some random, these are long pens too, so if these fit, pretty much anything will. Yeah, you can just fill it up with whatever you happen to need for your supplies. Another thing you could do if you have a lot of long supplies and you only have short zippers is you could situate your zipper more to one end, but those long ones fit fine with this short zipper. They're in there just fine. And you could make a bunch of these for different things. And in fact, if you want to have a bigger pouch, you could take not cut this fabric in half, take 2 pieces of fabric and then make a twice as wide pouch, and that would look really great. You could fit way more things in there. And yeah, make it however you want to. Make it really big and put your throw pillows in it in your living room, and then you'll have brand new pillow covers. It's a versatile thing to know how to do. It's a simple pouch. So I hope you found this informative. I put a little tassel on this one because I have little sewing machines on it. How cute is that? This one had a heavier duty zipper just because that's what I happen to have. And I love projects like this where I can just feel like, I feel like making something. What do I have? And then just work from there. Oh, and I did a little pink tassel on one of these. What did I do with that one? I don't know. I'm losing things left and right. Here it is. I'm losing things left and right. I love these little pouches though. And see, you know, you can contrast your zippers. Like I put a yellow zipper on this one. I thought that's really cute, kind of peeking in there, seeing that that little contrast of color. Have fun with it. You can find packs of a dozen rainbow zippers from the YKK company, which is a reputable zipper company, on Amazon for about $10 to $20. You can get bulk packs, and then you can get bulk packs of the fabric pretty easily on Amazon if you don't have a local fabric store. But if you have fat quarters in your stash, if you have clothing that you're going to get rid of, think of that as fabric. If you've got, you know, maybe you have some vintage napkins or hankies or something like that that you got to use on a project and you don't know what you want to do with them. Think about using them for this. Make sure the fabric's sturdy enough if you are going to put pens or pencils or stuff, whatever you're going to store in it, make sure the fabric is sturdy enough for it. But it's just a fun little project that you can make. And if you can make a pouch, you can make a curtain, you can make a cushion, you can make most anything. You can replace a zipper in a pair of pants. You can alter something. So have fun with it. And maybe this will be the start of a new hobby for you. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it's kind of random for my channel, but I was making these. They were fun, so I thought I would share it with you. And let me know what you like to sew in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, happy crafting. Bye!